Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Conversations with Annassa. We're so happy to be here with you. So there's a new word we want to introduce before we start the meditation because it's an important concept and we'll be using it during the meditation. And this is a word we've made up. It's called trust fall. And trust fall is maybe a better explanation of allowing, or the word that is commonly used in spiritual practice, surrender. But trustful is what we do to let go into the field of the all that is, which is the field of love, peace, happiness, and gratitude. And so we're not trust falling into the field of any person or any being, but we are trust falling into the source of everything that is, which is where we came from, what keeps us alive, and where we will return to when we die. So the opportunity is to release ourselves into this field of pure, raw love, peace, gratitude, and happiness. So now let's start our meditation. So as always, take your attention just below your belly button. This is the grounding center, and it's very important that we cultivate this center so that we can be here on the earth, in our body, being present with all that is, both inside and outside us. So take your attention there, breathe into the space below your belly button, and trust fall into the space between the breaths. So you inhale, and however long it's comfortable to allow yourself to fall in between the breaths, do, and exhale whenever you're ready. How long that space is irrelevant. That you cultivate it is very important. So inhale, space. Exhale, space. And in that space, you trust fall. And you can say the words, I am that. And you can also say, in between the exhale and the inhale, that I am. And as you feel this energy center expand, be sure that you include the back of your body in the expansion as well as the front. When you're ready, drop your attention just down below the earth, wherever you're sitting. Into the energy center where we plant our commitment to union with love, peace, joy, happiness, which all point to that which is beyond, the field we do not have language for, but is available between the breaths. So continue trust falling between the breaths. I am that I am. Gently allow your attention to come up to your heart center. Breathe into that center in the middle of your chest, in the space between the breaths. I am that I am. Again, pay attention to the space behind your heart center. And in between the breaths, trust fall into love, peace, happiness, gratitude, and that which is beyond. When you're ready, allow your attention to come up to the third eye, behind and between the eyebrows in the center of the head. Breathe into that space. Trust fall into the space between the breaths. I am that. That I am. When you're ready, gently allow your attention to rise to the edge of the aura above your head, the place where your two hands would meet if you made a halo around your head. Take your attention to that place and allow yourself to receive energy from the all that is, that which is beyond. As you breathe into that energy center and trust fall into that which is beyond, love, peace, happiness, and gratitude. Holding your attention in the space above your head, that energy center, extend your awareness down under the earth to that energy center and begin breathing between the two of them. And again, trust fall into the space between the breaths. I am that. That I am. as you come into the experience of your central channel. Imagine that the heavens are raining down pranic plasma, the healing substance that heals everything. Pranic plasma. Allow yourself to receive the shower of love. When you're ready, gently bring your attention back to the center below your belly button, and we'll begin our program together. So we want to say a few words first as you gather your questions. And that is, when we trust fall, we are not trust falling into another human being or into the field of Annassa, but into the field of pure being, the field of source energy. And the biggest problem human beings have when they arrive on the earth after they've been indoctrinated into the matrix of belief, which is that we are completely separate from divinity, and that the only path to get there is through 1 in a billion beings that has access. And in this way, we become easily controlled because we are separate from our source, from our own authenticity. So when we trust fall into pure, raw love, We are trust falling into that which is the source of our being, which is what creates life. It's where life comes from, and it's where life goes back to when we die. And so there is no being that you are trust falling into except life itself, which has organizing principles that when you become in a state of pure being connected to this divine energy, all of your questions become answered. Who you are, how to behave, why you're here, and what your particular doing is about. And doing that comes from being is the highest calling that any of us can have. So the practice is really connecting you to your deepest self. So we welcome questions. How may we serve today?
Are angels sentient beings?
Are angels sentient beings is the question. And of course is the answer. And there are all kinds of angels. You know, people who are schooled in Catholicism probably know way more than is accessible to us at this moment. Of course, angels are sentient and they live according to the laws of love, which generally do not allow them to cross without an invitation. So it's important that you begin to cultivate, if you want to, these beings that are already active in guiding you. And that activity will increase exponentially as you ask to participate. As you make yourself available. And the way that angelic beings communicate with us is, first of all, with synchronicity. When you begin to notice synchronicity in the events around you, that alerts you to the participation of divine beings in your life. They also will try to answer our questions. The problem with questions from humanity is that we often have an answer that we want to hear. And so we have to be very careful when a knowing arises in us to a question that we have asked. We have to look carefully to whether that question was coming from our seeking pleasure and avoiding pain, or if it's coming from a true place of wanting to know. And so it's up to us to self-govern, that when we ask a question, we're asking it from a place deeper than seeking pleasure and avoiding pain. Because as you notice, and most of us are old enough to have enough experience to realize that the experiences in our lives that truly changed us for the better generally come from us having to face a certain kind of unavoidable pain. And that in that pain, we are forced to step back and, in a way, take stock of what has happened when this pain shocks us into a new understanding that dawns over time in our recovery from whatever experience it is that kind of took us out of circulation for a bit to reorganize. For example, when a parent dies, especially the first parent that dies, we have no experience to compare that to until it happens to us. And depending on what our relationship was with that parent, we are reorganized either gently or not so gently if there were lots of loose ends and unworked experience that was shared. Because what happens when a parent, a close family member dies, is that our entire system goes through a reorganization because we're naturally connected to our relatives, the close ones. But having this capacity to reach beyond any circumstance into the highest that exists for all of us, the ground that we all came from and will return to, can teach us how to really participate in these relationships before people die, so that death for them, if they are willing, can be pure expansion into love. And we can actually participate in love with them as they approach this experience. And then the whole reorganization is a completely different event. And so this is important work. This is the work that really changes the lines of our expansion in terms of our ability to embody more love in ourselves. And the way we do that is by sharing it with the people around us. And in that sharing, our experience of love expands as their experience of love grows to meet ours. And this is the way pollination happens. This is the way the world changes to embrace a new worldview based in love, peace, happiness, and most of all, connection to our own divinity, to our own source of being, connection to the all that is, which is where our life comes from. And as we immerse ourselves, trust fall deeper and deeper into that field, that is the field of becoming. That is the field of being. And as we become more and more immersed in that, what happens with our breath is that the in-breath is like a caterpillar. The space between the breaths is the chrysalis of transmutation as we trust fall into that space between the breaths. And then the exhale becomes the butterfly. And this happens in the microcosm of our breath. And then as we begin to expand in the microcosm of our body, this happens in every cell as this energy expands throughout our body. And gently, gently, we become a being And from that being, the doing arises. And the doing that arises from being is naturally in alignment with the highest best for us and the highest best for everyone else. And that arises within us with a sense of knowing. And that knowing is our confidence because we are aligned in being. Thank you for that question. How may we serve further?
How does prosmic plasma work? Pranic plasma work.
So the question is, how does pranic plasma work? How we're not so good with. We're much better with what. And I mean, what pranic plasma does is it comes into every cell and informs it about love, peace, happiness, and gratitude. And also, it is naturally from the field of health, because divinity is completely connected to the flow within our bodies, between the cells themselves. As we begin this practice of dropping deeply into the source of our lives between every breath, as this breath begins to have space between the inhale and the exhale, we naturally become more calm people, more aligned people. And in this alignment, as we visualize ourselves being immersed in a shower of pranic plasma, the healing energy that heals everything it touches, we are embodying this energy. It's an energy field that we all come from and we all return to. And the more we cultivate it, the more it begins to explain itself to us. And so our intention in being here is to focus your attention on that inside you, not on us. We are the information, the source of information that can empower you inside yourselves. We do have an energetic presence that can help you to kind of get the wheels turning inside yourself. And that is nothing less than source energy that becomes available to you. But we're not the point. You're the point. And the work you do inside yourselves is what will allow you to access your own deepest self. And this is what's really important. And in accessing that deepest self, pranic plasma is already available. All we have to do is trust fall, open ourselves into allowing it to completely immerse us, revitalize us, and help us become the healthiest being that we can manifest. Because it is our dis-ease inside ourselves, the unresolved dramas and traumas that happen to us because of matrix of belief, that we live in a world of rewards and punishments, that if we don't behave in certain ways, then rewards and punishments happen to us. And this is a matrix of belief that has been foisted on us by those who wish to control. And there's no need to say more than that, because what that is completely irrelevant. The more attention we put on that, the stronger that becomes. Because really, where we put our attention is what grows. So the way to participate in this field of energy is to cultivate it really, we can cultivate it with every breath of awareness that we take. And as we put our attention inside, cultivating our state of being and our state of union with the divine source of all that is, then we become that. If we waste our energy out there, nothing happens. We can put, all of our energy out there fighting. Nothing will happen. Nothing will come back but more fighting, because that's what we're investing ourselves in. If we invest our attention and our energy inside of ourselves, we have suddenly become part of the solution for the entire planet. Because part of the solution is just unifying our attention with the earth itself, so that we begin to understand that we are in union with the earth and our life depends on the earth. We can't just abuse the earth and expect it to endlessly fulfill us. Now, there is plenty for everyone. There is no shortage of anything when we are in alignment, because part of that natural alignment is cultivating the earth, which incidentally is cultivating the pranic plasma, which is available to every living being. And when we are participating in that field with no idea of competition for resources, because it's not necessary when we're in alignment, because our purpose is our unique purpose. It's not competitive because nobody else has that same unique purpose. There are laws that actually govern how everything is meant to work, but they've been perverted by the few asserting control over the many with this matrix of belief that's held in place by fear. If we don't obey the rewards and punishments that our matrix of belief presents to us as the only way to survive. And this was handed down to us by people who were very well-meaning and didn't know what they were doing, because they were not educated in the way that you're having the opportunity in this moment to be educated about the source of our being. So pranic plasma is available to every living thing, not just us, but it is the healing that naturally exists within the universe. We have been taught that the only way to get healed is to give up all our power to a doctor outside of us who will magically produce a pill that will make us better forever. If we've been around for more than 3 decades, we've learned that that doesn't really exactly work that way. That the true ways that we can invest in our health is by paying attention to our diet, by paying attention to our mental and emotional diet, that we aren't constantly inviting drama and trauma into our field of relationships, and by really managing our own energy by moving. Moving is the source of everything. Moving is how we know we're alive. So when we move our bodies, we are participating in the flow of energy within our physical matrix, which is very important. As we participate in that, we get stronger and stronger and stronger. When we get stagnant, we get toxic and more toxic and more toxic. So it's important that we move, that we get this energy going, that we get our body as an energy system in motion, part of every day, that we cultivate our energetic flow as we did in meditation, so that we are in that arena not stagnant either. And as we begin to increase our own flow, then how to participate outside ourselves will become obvious from the inside out. when we relate to the world from the outside in and we're trying to people please and meet expectations outside of us, we can get very distorted. We've probably all experienced that at one time or another. And when we stop doing that and begin to take our cues from inside our being and from the idea, does participating in this serve my alignment deeper in myself, or does it take me away from that and use my energy for a different purpose that's going to just burn it up so that I don't have it to bring back to my own alignment? This is the kind of question that we ask ourselves as we consider our participation and how we use our energy outside of ourselves, how we express it. Because the question we want to ask in every expression that we participate in is, how may I serve the highest for my highest being and for the highest being of the whole? And the answer to that will be the same. But we won't begin to understand that until we ask the question. So we're ready for the next question. We hope that answers about pranic plasma. Thank you.
How do aware parents work with all this interaction with their children?
Well, it depends on how open the child is still. You know, the more you can teach a child that when they feel bad, they can hug themselves into happy, the more independent you have made that child for life. Because when a child knows that they are responsible for their own happiness, that it exists inside them, then they never will look to another for that. Because we all have learned by experience over and over and over that other people can't make us happy. Oh, momentarily they can do something nice for us, but how long does that last? Happiness doesn't happen outside of ourselves. Happiness happens inside of ourselves, and it's a choice that we make and we learn to cultivate inside of ourselves so that we are happy really no matter what. That's what we're cultivating, is this state of happiness that we choose over and over and over, no matter what's going on outside of us. And as we do that, it gives us a little bit of space. An experience comes in that could be very traumatizing. Like, you know, Rebecca got a letter a few months ago that she owed the IRS $28,000 from a number of years ago. And, you know, the opportunity was there to go into crisis mode instantly. Because who has $28,000 lying around to just give to the IRS? And so she took this letter knowing that she has an accountant and doesn't particularly mind paying taxes, and all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted before those returns go in. And so she didn't even read the letter beyond the unavoidable conclusion that declared itself. She just sent it to her accountant and said, something's up. If I need to know about it, when I need to know about it, I'll deal with it. And cultivating our inner being gives us that opportunity to not react in the moment, even if we have bad news. So this becomes possible. This is probably not the best demonstration of it, but we have these things that happen in our lives that we suddenly get traumatic news in the mail, or somebody emails us and something happens. But we almost always have the opportunity to step back before that flood of emotional reactive responses is engaged. You know, the adrenaline and the cortisol and all these things that throw us into an emotional chaos. We don't have to engage these. We don't have to do that. We can say, oh, this is interesting. I don't have enough information to make a decision about it. And so we sit back and we breathe. We breathe into our alignment and say, what is in the highest best for me and for the whole in this situation? And in that situation of the letter demanding money, there was nothing to be done in that moment, and no reason for hysteria. Although that certainly a few years ago would have been the response, because, you know, what are you going to do when that happens? But when you're really more interested in cultivating your own being than in participating in drama and trauma, you get a whole different perspective about how to behave in the world, and what becomes relevant and what becomes irrelevant, until maybe at some later date there's some action to be taken when you have a better understanding of what's going on. So a lot of what we're talking about is making the choice to step back one step from your experience, so you can experience your life from a witness perspective rather than from a reactive perspective. If you look at your reactions over time, you will see that when you react to a situation, you are almost always invoking some past pattern of experience that recognizes this experience as though it's the same trauma that happened earlier in our lives. And so we respond, we react, we don't respond, we react with this feeling from the past. And so when we take our feelings as indications of unresolved dis-ease inside ourselves, we can take that reaction and say to ourselves, okay, what was the feeling? The feeling was, my survival is threatened. Okay, so am I in danger? Is that fear appropriate? No, there's no danger here in this second. You know, it may be that there will be danger later from this situation, but not in this moment. And so in saying that, you can say, okay, so this fear is from something in my past. You don't exactly need to know the situation in your past that needs resolution. If you do need to know, your inner will reveal that. It will be unavoidable. If you don't need to know, you just say, okay, I feel fear. And you invite the fear to be present. You don't push it down and say, you know, later, friend. You invite it. You allow yourself to fear the fear that your life is threatened. And you look around yourself, you make sure that you're not in any danger in this moment. And then with that fear, you can say to your highest self, you can say Ho'oponopono. And the words of Ho'oponopono, which is a Hawaiian practice for resolving dis-ease within ourselves, you say, I'm sorry, because I'm out of alignment with my highest self. You're saying this to your highest self. Please forgive me for this alignment that isn't here. Thank you I love you. And the order in which you say those words will have everything to do with what it is you are addressing inside yourself. But we have experienced over and over that if you invite whatever dis-ease you are feeling in the moment into this field of awareness, and you say to your highest self through the fear, the anger, the frustration, the depression, the despair, whatever it is you are feeling, you invite that feeling to yourself to be resolved into love, peace, happiness, and gratitude. And as you say, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, thank you, to your highest self, in whatever order yourself chooses in that moment, you can resolve every dis-ease that comes to the surface in your experience as you go through it. And in this way, you are creating more and more flow and more trust of yourself and your highest to become available in the moments that you need it. And so in cultivating this internal flow, you are creating more and more space inside yourself so that that space between the breaths becomes a reality, and you are trust falling into love itself as that becomes more and more the ground of your experience. Thank you for your question. How may we serve further? We're so happy to be here with you. It's very joyful for us. Please, we welcome your questions. And feel free to raise your hand. You can be unmuted and talk to us directly. We love that. So we want to say a bit further from last week. We had a question about Tonglen practice, which is inhaling the negativity of the world and exhaling love. And we said very clearly last week that this is a practice that can actually weaken us because we are taking in a toxicity that we likely don't have the capacity to process yet. And that when we invite that toxicity without the capacity to truly transmute it and exhale it back as love, then we can get really confused and we can actually do ourselves harm. And this is the truth. Now, we're going to revise our answer just a little bit in that as you cultivate yourself in becoming more and more the experience of love itself, naturally your field of being will expand. And in that expansion, it naturally includes some other people. And so as your field of being becomes bigger and bigger, it naturally will transmute the energy within that sphere of influence. It naturally will transmute that to a higher frequency. This is not exactly an action of will, and there is no, this is the way the energy itself works. The energy of love creates more love with everything it touches. And so this is not something that we cultivate as a practice for ourselves to heal the world, because that can very quickly get us into a kind of delusion and into trying to take on more than our being has the capacity to transmute. But for somebody like the Dalai Lama, who has been practicing since the moment he was born, his sphere of influence is very large. So as he does his practice, many people are naturally brought into a state of harmony as they connect to that field. And that happens through contact with his field of energy, but it's not exactly volitional on his part, except that he continues to expand his own field of creative energy, and that naturally participates with all the people who connect to his field, and the whole is lifted up. And so we could call that a natural Tonglen practice. And that happens naturally as we expand our sphere of influence. But this is not something that at this point we would advocate as a practice in and of itself for the intention of bringing the whole to a higher level, because the danger in it exceeds the benefit until it happens naturally. And then it's a matter of flow. It's not a matter of will. So that's what we would say. So that's how our understanding of that sort of evolved in the week as it kind of filtered through deeper. We hope that's helpful. How may we serve further? Yes.
How does infection happen in the body?
There's all kinds of ways we could answer this. So we're assuming you're not asking this as a medical question. So we're going to say this. How do we keep infection from happening in the body is maybe a more relevant question. What we can do is build our strength in every possible dimension. First of all, we move. You know, we can say that infection arises out of vulnerability and weakness in the system. We can say that. And so if we want to avoid infection, from the medical perspective, it all has to do with how strong your immune system is. So there are definite ways to build your immune system. The first is to exercise. If your body is strong and in flow with itself and in good communication, you will know the second you run into something that's threatening your defenses. And, you know, you take vitamin C, you take zinc, you take vitamin D. There's a fourth. Quercetin. If you take those four things, that will build your immune system. And so if you take those regularly, you don't even have to think about it. If you take them irregularly, the second you feel anything, you take them immediately. But those four things will build your immune system to help support against any infection that tries to happen. Another thing that's very important is that you take care of your teeth. If infection happens in your teeth, it can actually spread to your whole body. So it's important to keep that whole system clean and flowing. So movement, and of course there's nutrition. Nutrition is really, really important. And we'll tell you that we eat organic food almost exclusively. The only time we don't is if we don't know about it. And the reason is not because organic food is more nutritious, although it's our experience that it likely is. But really, the main thing about organic food is it's not covered with pesticides. And pesticides are made to kill living things. And what are we? What are our intestines? What is our gut? We're living things. We have a gut bacteria. Why would those pesticides not kill our gut bacteria? Nobody has ever asked that question who is interested in selling pesticides. And so this disconnect in our culture outside of us has important consequences. And so if we want to support our bodies, we eat nutritious food that's not covered with chemicals, that's not full of chemicals that have tried to make it taste a certain way so that we get addicted to it and can't stop it. We try to avoid those foods. We try to eat foods in as close to their appearance in nature. We try to not alter that too far before it goes into our bodies. At the same time, spices are really wonderful. They contain a lot of healing elements for us. You know, things like curcumin, curries, garlic, onions. These things all have medicinal properties that are completely wonderful for us. So eating nutritious, very, very wonderful tasting food in quantity. And if we want to balance our weight, then we just eat more water-based foods in our diet and less calorie-dense foods, and that weight will naturally shift. So this is how we think in terms of avoiding infection. You know, that people, when they are together, they naturally share their microbes. And this is part of how the immune system does push-ups. And so, you know, living in fear about what we might or might not run into is not a healthy attitude. At the same time, we're in the middle of a pandemic, and as we look, most of us are at an age where we're at risk. So we need to be smart about our exposures. We need to be a little bit careful. And that's all fine. At the same time, we don't need to be consumed with fear, because when it's our time to go, it will be our time and there's nothing we can do about it. And so having accepted that and having embraced the love that we're made of, we can meet that as an experience that will release us into more of that pure, raw love. And when we go from love inside ourselves to love itself, what's there to fear in that? Everybody who's passed on and come back has told us that there's a white light that takes us someplace very, very special, and that they didn't particularly want to come back when they were told they had to. So we can sort of take that as truth, since everybody who's ever done that says the same thing. So living in fear of infection and impending death, well, nobody gets out of here alive. So why don't we just prepare to be the love that we are by being that love and greeting every experience that comes to us from that place? Thank you for that question. We hope we answered. How may we serve further?
How do you explain source to children?
through nature. You know, everything that exists comes from something alive. And so that bird that you see flying in the sky came from life, and it will return to life. And everything that's born goes through this same process, life to life, life to life. That plant emerges from a seed in the ground. How magical. This is source energy. This is how source interacts with us. We also come from source. It's pure magic. If you look at the birth of a human being, the creation of a human being inside another person, this is pure magic that we've become sort of immune to the magic that it is, kind of jaded to it because it's a common experience. This is miracle. Life comes from nowhere, comes from source. So allowing children to experience source as magic connects them to the magic within themselves, which is this field of pure love, peace, happiness, gratitude. Having a practice with children where before they do anything in the day, they think of 3 things they're grateful for. Do you know how that reorganizes a child's brain when they think about gratitude before they think about, you know, what they're going to beg for in the grocery store or in the toy store? To reorganize the child's thinking so that gratitude is part of their harmonious participation, so that bringing themselves regularly into love. Have you ever taught a child to hug themselves when they're unhappy? This is love. Just love yourself. When something bad happens, that means you go inside and say, I love you. I'm sorry this bad thing happened. I really love you more than anything. And when the child grows up feeling that about themselves, imagine the life that they are set up to lead. When they feel that they have come from magic and miracle and pure being. All children know about pure being. They play in it all the time. They make up all kinds of scenarios. They are free in their fantasy life. If you teach them that that magic and miracle never goes away, it never will. It just goes away because we get involved in this matrix of belief, and rewards and punishments in our school system is probably one of the biggest promoters of this rewards and punishment system, because everything there is rewards and punishment, and learning in a particular way that makes our linear matrix of belief the only possible way of thinking. And what we're talking about is nonlinear reality, which is completely expansive and operates under an entirely different system of laws. And if you'll notice, matrix of belief only goes as far as linear physics, and then it kind of breaks down. When we get into the quantum field, we don't have language to explain how it works, because all our language is linear. But our heart's not linear. Our heart doesn't know linear. Our heart just knows expansive love, which contains everything. And from this perspective, we can understand quantum reality, which is by its very nature expansive, and by its very nature regenerating and automatically upgrading as it moves through time and space. Now, the thing about quantum reality is that time breaks down because time is a linear concept that we have invented in order to align ourselves in this rewards and punishment reality where we have to appear at certain times and disappear. We're allowed to disappear at certain times as we reap the reward of our avoidance of punishment by doing what's expected. But when we step back and begin to understand that time doesn't really exist, then we understand that pure being is outside of time. And it gets even more complex for our minds. Our minds cannot wrap around this. Past, present, and future are all interchangeable in the now moment. But that's essentially irrelevant for this conversation, because until we get so deeply in our being and our sense of expansiveness, this doesn't really become part of our reality. And as it becomes part of our reality, the beauty of spiritual growth is that we are never challenged. It always feels like we're challenged to the edge of our capacity, which is a good thing, because we don't want to take 10 billion lifetimes to expand to the understanding of quantum reality. But life knows our tolerances. And so we are never tested beyond our capacity to absorb and grow. And these are not exactly tests, it's not the right word. What it is that our dis-ease arises so that we can dismantle and absorb it into more love. And so this is not exactly a test, but a requirement for our spiritual growth. And as we get more and more invested in our spiritual growth, this happens more and more, which begins to feel like, oh, all I'm doing is cultivating more pain. And that's true for a little bit. But every bit of pain that we cultivate and resolve, we expand bigger. And once we experience that a few times, we'll find ourselves looking for it because we want to resolve our pain, become more and more of this love field. And this just keeps happening in our evolution. And as we expand, so does our sphere of influence. And we become more and more aligned with the all that is. Thank you for that question.
Can we inhale our own negativity to move it to love without harm?
Absolutely. And it's not, it becomes as simple as inhaling our own negativity, but really what we're doing is, first of all, allowing it. Matrix of belief would have us stuff any feeling that we have that's not socially appropriate and not express it. This creates a huge backlog of stagnation, of negativity. And this dis-ease builds on itself until it creates physical symptoms. This is a little bit too linear description of the problem, but not really. This is what happens. And so normally we expect aging to be accumulation of disintegrations because that's our matrix of belief. And that certainly is true if we don't dissolve these disharmonies in our emotional system as they occur. And most of us were not taught to do that as children. And so it's not natural for us to cultivate the arising of our negativity, to welcome it with open arms, to be brought into love with Ho'oponopono. But Ho'oponopono does work. And as we experience negativity in our daily life, which naturally arises from our experience when, something unwelcome happens. And it happens to all of us usually multiple times in a day. And so whenever this negativity rises up, we welcome it, we identify it, even if it's just, I'm uncomfortable, I wish that hadn't happened. We identify it. Oh, this makes me really sad. Okay, I'm going to welcome my sadness. Hello, sadness. I'm sorry to my highest self because I'm not in connection. Please forgive me for not being in connection. I love you, my highest self. Thank you. And you begin to feel this matrix just melt. It's like a piece of ice that melts into water and dissolves into steam as you become more and more love. And it may take you 15 repetitions. It may take you 5,000 repetitions because it's something really big that has unearthed itself. It doesn't matter. You just do it. You do it for 10 minutes at a time, and you may feel like you made no progress at all. But the first time you do it successfully, you understand that it works. The second time you do it successfully, you're really, really convinced. The 10th time, it has become a habit. This is how you unearth the disease, the disharmony of the past. You bring it to harmony, you make more space, you expand, you become bigger, you're sharing more love with everybody you meet. And this just builds and builds and builds on itself. And there you are, dissolving into love at the moment of your death. Between now and then, you have shared the pollination of love with every person that you meet. And you're not dumb about this. Before the pandemic, we will say that 15% of people were interested in this conversation. Because of the pandemic, many people have been reorganized in a way that they're more interested in this conversation than they were before. But before the pandemic, 85% of people had no use for any of this information. And if you tried to share it with them, you would look like someone with two heads. And so it's important that you understand who you are talking to when you begin to have this conversation about love as the ground of everything, because the 85%ers, depending on what their power relationship is to you, it's not worth bringing up the conversation. But with children, with people who are open to this conversation, there's lots of room. And you can begin sharing your own experience with them. But you do it in a conscious way so you know who you're talking to. And over time, you discover where the leverage points are in people. And as you become more and more expansive, those leverage points will expose themselves to you, and there will be an entrance point, because truly, 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 the problem of human suffering boils down to separation from source, separation from our own capacity to love ourselves, which is the same as separation from source energy. And it is that separation that really has caused all the misunderstanding that exists. So we have come to our time for the closing meditation, We have so much enjoyed this conversation with you and your participation in it. Thank you so, so much. So we'll take our attention inside, and this time we are going to meditate with our eyes open. And it's up to you if you want to have your eyes open or your eyes closed. It makes no difference. We are available as an energy source, regardless of eyes open or eyes closed. And so let's take our attention inside, just below our belly button, grounding ourselves into our bodies as we open ourselves to the field of love, peace, happiness, gratitude, which all point to that which is beyond, which is the field of I am that. Take your attention into your belly, just below your belly button. I am that. Between the breaths, as you trust fall into love. When you're ready, drop your attention just under the earth as you come into union with Mother Earth herself. I am that. That I am. Gently take your attention into your heart center. Breathe in between the breaths. I am that. When you're ready, bring your attention to your third eye, behind and between your eyebrows, in the center of your head, between the breaths. I am that. that I am. Allow your attention to come to the top of your aura. I am that trust fall into love. That I am. Holding your attention there at the top of your aura, feel to the energy center just beneath the earth and begin to circulate through your central channel. I am that at the poles of your energetic being. I am that. That I am. Continue at your own pace. Gently bring your attention back inside yourself. Thank you so much for participating today. We are so happy to be with you. Brings us great joy. Till next time.